Welcome to season 1 of Top Crop.
We found out that the ground is alive.
Trying to get done a little quicker and trying to simplify things a little bit.
You know, there's only so much money to go around. I look for big wins.
Welcome to Top Crop. Today is August 2nd, 2023. It's finally fungicide time. So we have the airplanes in here today. We actually have 2 of them here, and we're flying all of our corn. Hopefully we're going to get all of our acres knocked out today. Normally it's something we do a week after 4th of July, but because of Mother Nature this year, we're way behind. And it's just now time to go on August 2nd. So you guys are going to get to see a bunch of beans and a bunch of corn and a bunch of airplanes today. We're out here in a field where we actually walked earlier this year. So this is the one where me and my dad had the argument about whether to plant or not to plant. And we did 20 acres that we did plant, and we decided to shut it down. We just wasn't happy with it. We came back out a little bit later in the year. We walked it, and looks like I made the wrong decision. So here we are back again to check out the beans to see where we stand now. So on my left hand is the beans that we planted early in April, that I deemed, you know, conditions weren't just correct enough to go ahead and go full bore. Still too wet, too cold. On the right, as we came back about 2.5 weeks later and planted. You can see not too much of a difference when you drive by, but when you hold them up side by side, you'll see the ones that was planted a little bit earlier. They're about a 4-inch height difference on them. Another thing you'll notice, they're about 1.5 stages ahead of these that were just planted 2.5 weeks behind. They're both looking good. We've both had a lot of good weather for them. We've had a lot of July rains to keep them going. So it's going to be real interesting to take this to yield and see what we get. All right, so this is probably one of my better bean fields that we're standing in here. They were planted, I think May 11th, around that time frame. Okay. But this is really good productive dirt. We tried some different things and the fall burned down. So just wanted to bring you out here and try to get your opinion of what you think we can do to continue to attack this. We just attacked it here at R3.
Yeah, so Cory, I can tell you've put some investment in this crop already because you got good pod set. The thing that you got going on right now, considering this weather, it's been about, you know, it's mid-80s right at the moment. Sitting here early first part of August, you have a lot of flowers yet to come, a lot of pods yet to set. So these beans got a whole lot of potential. You know, this, you know what I mean by top crop, Cory? Mm-hmm. You know, that top cluster of plants, of pods that we get all excited about in the middle of August, and we think there's our next 5-6 bushel, and then all of a sudden Mother Nature does what? She gets hot, she gets dry, and all of a sudden stress this plant off, and it says, you know what, save what you can, get rid of those, kick those pods and those blooms off. And you know, you can see this here, I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but we still got some purple flowers coming and a lot of pods that are just starting to set.
So what would you recommend going, you know, now that we've already attacked it at R3, would this be, you know, a field, and, you know, just looking from what we've looked at here, would you be thinking about like an R5 pass? Or
so Cory, when we have yield potential out there and we've got beans that look this good, there is yield yet to be made, right, and preserved on this crop. You know, I contend that we give up on crops way too early. I think that we make that R3 fungicide pass, and then we're tired and we want to go to the lake, right? We're done farming for the year until the combine rolls, and I'm telling you, there's money to be made with another pass on this. Beans that look like this, that have potential, you've already put the onward backs application, so we know that we've dropped stress in this to retain our fruiting sites, our pods, our flowers, and that the seed set on this plant. So we know we're going to set a lot of seed. As we think about filling that out, we need to make sure we've got good K levels in this plant. So I'm a big fan of late season potassium acetate. Potassium acetate is 4.5 times more efficient in foliar uptake and utilization by a plant versus any form of foliar potassium on the market. I'm also a fan of putting octane with this just one more time at a pint, right? You don't need
one more time again?
One more time again. Help that translocation of nutrients. You know, pulling it out of this source to sink movement out of this leaf and into this pod to fill it out, and we get yield and test weight. So one of the applications that I'm making now is potassium octane, and then also spiking it with an extra little bit of boron. So we have a new product out this year called XR5 KSB, potassium sulfur boron. It is a 4020. It has 5% sulfur, and it also has a 0.5% boron. It's a workhorse type product, but it is predominantly potassium acetate, and that's going to be a 1 to 2 quart use rate depending on your K levels in your soil. So if you're a little light on potassium, I'm going to recommend the 2 quart rate. If you got some adequate potassium, mid to high ranges, I'm probably going to back down to a quart, quart and a half. So, but it is predominantly potassium acetate to fill these pods out. And I've been seeing plus 60, even all the way up to 62 pound test weight on soybeans, which is unreal, right? So that's exciting. We haul weight to the bins and to the elevator.
And it always seems like the higher the yield you get, the lower the test weight the beans are.
That's right.
It's like you make a bigger bean and they weigh less. So, you know, on corn, we always know that 62 pound test weight's that sweet spot for
right.
350 plus bushel corn.
Yeah.
Beans, I would love to see what we could do with a big bean that weighed 62 pounds.
Yeah.
You know, and loaded with that many pods per node. I mean, you know, I'm anxious to see that, you know, if we can pull that off.
Extra potassium doesn't create more beans, right? You've already done that by R5. You've got your beans in there. What it does is it fills that pod out. And that's where that yield and test weight comes from.
In the past 3 years, we're 365 GDUs behind schedule. So that is one of our concerns here. You know, if we don't have solar, we don't have GDUs, we don't have photosynthesis, we don't have energy into that plant. So that's where, when you guys approached about Architect and being able to add that on at that V5 time frame, I was really excited for it. Definitely looks like it's doing its job here. I'm excited to take it to yield and see if we can't get it on every acre next year.
Farmers deserve a nitrogen that works as hard as they do, one that stays with the crop until the job is done. It's time to turn to a better nitrogen with Pivot Bio.
Hey there, it's Dan Lipkus of the new show Top Crop. The idea of this show is to kind of show things that are working for me, other farmers, things that have an ROI. The contest stuff's all great and well and good, but sometimes you spend an awful lot of money on all that. And we've got certain products we find value in. I've got some real good corn, and we're going to put these out on that to try to make it better. Now, we're in a drought situation. The good corn's on some irrigated ground. I've got some dry land that looks really bad. I mean, it's tough. Hasn't rained in a long time. This is one of the driest Mays on record where we're at in northern Illinois. It's now in the middle of June, still hasn't rained except for a couple little piddly sidewalk wetters. So tough conditions here. The pastures are already drying out. We're already having to feed our cows, which I never had to do in early June. So, but anyway, to get to the point here, we're going to show some of the products that we're using. So we get a couple products from NMS Nutrition, which is Brad Faulkner. I think you may have seen him on Corn Warriors. He's kind of a, you know, a corn guru, or more than that, he's an all-plant guru. He knows a lot of different stuff about a lot of different things, including cattle, you know, livestock and crops, which actually play hand in hand lots of different times. So we use Brad's concentrated fulvic. We just use that at a low rate, 1/2 ounce to the acre, just for leaf penetration mostly, to get all these other products to go into the leaf better. This year we're going to be using this yucca. That's derived from a yucca plant. It's when you hear people talk about like stress mitigators and terpenes and those kind of things, that's kind of in the same family as that. A couple ounces to the acre of that. You can't even use a little less. Nano N's new to us. That's everybody, the kind of one of the new words is nanotechnology, right? Well, it's where you take a molecule and you have thousands of sites, and it can load more onto there, like load the fertilizer onto there so it's more available to the plant. I don't completely understand it, I'll be totally honest about that. We're just trying it. It sure sounds good. It's supposed to make your fertilizer much, much more efficient and get in the plant better. So that's this pass. We're also putting a molasses product in that I don't have sitting on the gate. I've got that in bulk here. We're putting that in, that's got sugars, hopefully give the plants a little more energy. Sugar's always good. That's kind of a staple for us. We like adding that through the year. And then I will be putting in a little bit of a, it's called a 10-13-13, which is in a shuttle over here. It's just another foliar amendment with, you know, just some nitrogen, some phosphorus, and some potash. 2.5 gallons to the acre of that. And to make up the rest of these components, obviously we're adding water to get us up to 12 gallons per acre. So that's where we end up.
In the season, that's when you start really needing that water. You start stressing. It actually ain't such a bad thing to be dry early, because it kind of makes them, it kind of forces the roots to grow farther. So it gives the roots a bigger area to suck up moisture later in the season. That the roots will actually, it seems to, they'll actually go looking for moisture. So it helps early if it's dry, but you still kind of need some rain to kind of help things along. You know, with water you can't bring it. Once you get later in the season and that ear's starting to get determinant on how big it's going to be, which according to my dad actually right about now is when nature's taking its course and it's kind of starting to determine how big that ear's going to be. But if that corn plant thinks it's in an environment to where it can put on more kernels, it will put on a bigger ear. But if it thinks it's going to be in a stress environment, then that ear's gonna, or the plant's gonna compensate for that. So that way it can put more towards the kernels that it's gonna have versus just putting on too small of kernels. The plant wants to be able to reproduce, right? And make sure that it has a viable offspring. So that's kind of the whole idea behind that. That's according to my dad.
Farmers deserve a nitrogen that works as hard as they do, one that stays with the crop until the job is done. It's time to turn to a better nitrogen with Pivot Bio.
Fungicide we're using is Veltima, because our 3rd year with it. It's been working great. There has been some tar spot already spotted in northern Ohio. Normally we've already flown all this corn, but we was able to wait until July 26th today. It's already past blister stage, starting to fill out already. We've been able to keep disease pressure away, and Veltima should protect us all the way through the rest of the season.
So today this is an R3 soybean plant. So we have a fully developed pod within the top 4 nodes. Right? So you count backwards 4 nodes, and if you have a pod an 1/8 inch long, that's R3. So today we're at R3. R4 is when we go into full pod set up and down this plant. So you can see that we've got a lot of buds that are coming down here that are yet to mature into pods. So this is R3. Next step will be fully potted R4. R5 is when that's going to start filling out those pods. You'll be able to see and feel the beans on the inside, and that's when the late R5 stages when it'll start to turn that brown or tawny color. So is when they'll start with the pod itself. So R5 is filling out the pods, and that's where potassium, guys, that potassium acetate really fills out the pod itself and makes heavy beans.
Okay, so at R5, you know, we talked about the potassium, the boron, the sugars. What about a PGR at that time?
So really when I think about PGR, timing is everything when it comes to plant nutrition, including PGRs. Take Onward Max, for example. We want to be at the front side of the reproduction and in front of any stresses. So the success of Onward Max is to be in front of Mother Nature when it gets hot and dry and ethylene glycol builds up inside this plant and starts to shut this plant down. That's the success of a PGR for the late season application. When it comes to the maturity stages, when I get into those late R stages, the R4.5 to R5 stage, I'm going to switch to its nutritional need, and I'm going to just go with a potassium acetate, some boron, and some carbon sources with the octane product.
Now what about if we're still hot and dry? Because sometimes it seems like August 15th is that make or break time frame here for soybeans in Ohio.
Yep.
And boy, like last year, we couldn't buy rain. I mean, we just went from August 15th all the way to the end of September without rain.
Yep.
And what we thought we were sitting on and what we harvested was two different things.
Yep.
Because we lost that on that rain. Do you think that can help prolong some of that stress with that plant?
Yep. So when you think about that stress event, right, when you got into August 15th, you already had your onward max, and that's the first thing to help weather the storm, right, to help fight Mother Nature. After that, having adequate potassium levels within plants, we know helps battle dry conditions. It's stomatal regulation, it's turgor pressure. There's a lot to helping that plant regulate itself. So late season potassium is just as important in a dry season to finish these beans off. I'll tell you, last year, Cory, I live over near Lafayette, Indiana. We went 7 weeks in season, so we went from V2 to R2 with absolutely no rain. It was a complete drought. When the beans turned to R2, they weren't even knee-high on me, which isn't saying much, but when it did start to rain, we got limited rains the rest of the year. But like you, in late August, it started to turn off again. And we went ahead and decided to manage this crop, right? Manage these plants. Right, and then we still made 80.5 bushel average. So I consider that a successful year, right, for the year that we had for 7 weeks worth of drought.
Absolutely.
Have you guys had a lot of insect pressure this year?
Not too bad. I mean,
So they look great.
yeah. I mean, but you got, so we sprayed R1, R3, try to come back R5.
Yep.
So, and every time I'm carrying insecticide.
Yeah. So what are you putting down in R1 application, nutritional wise?
Mainly potassium and sulfur at that time frame. A little bit of micronutrients, but just a fungicide to help with the bottom canopy, an insecticide. We get June bugs come in,
So you'll
Japanese
do
beetles.
2 fungicide applications in an R1 and an R3
Yes.
then? Okay.
Yep. So we're going to do a 2-shot. And, you know, the biggest thing that we've learned is just some Japanese beetles, June bugs, whatever you want to call them, they do 2 things. And that's eat and screw. And they can, you know, yeah, well, these are solar panels, you know, and the best way that I always try to explain it to people, you know, if you had a solar home, okay, and you had a solar panel sitting at home, if you had a hailstorm, would you expect to still get electricity?
Right.
If there's a bunch of holes in your solar panel. Well, it's the same thing for beans. We have a bunch of holes in these. Guess what they're not doing?
Cheap insurance application.
Yeah, it's cheap insurance. And if Mother Nature can just take care of us and give us some heat and some moisture, which we're, as you can tell right now, we've got plenty of moisture in the soil.
Yeah.
In the past 3 years, we're 365 GDUs behind schedule. So that is one of our concerns here. You know, if we don't have solar, we don't have GDUs, we don't have photosynthesis, we don't have energy into that plant. So that's where, when you guys approached about Architect and being able to add that on at that V5 time frame, I was really excited for it. Definitely looks like it's doing its job here. I'm excited to take it to yield and see if we can't get it on every acre next year.
We've really been fine-tuning our in-furrow program over the past couple of years and running some products that are really making a difference with this early season root growth. So we love our Pivot Bio, using that product #1, and then we're adding some things to not only feed that Pivot Bio, but feed the corn plant as well. So some sugar sources, a carbon source, just trying to get these little plants off to the best start we can get them.
The biggest thing is to be on target with whatever you're applicating. So let's say the best example of that is herbicide. You want to make sure that whether it's your pre or your post herbicide, it's actually getting to where it's supposed to go. Because there's a number of issues. If it doesn't go where you're trying to apply it, for example, if you're spraying a particular herbicide, let's use dicamba for the example, because dicamba gets the biggest rap for being the one that's always moving off target. There's different requirements for dicamba. You actually have to have have training to spray dicamba. You have to take a course every single year. I do have the training to spray dicamba, and we do spray dicamba, but there's certain times you cannot spray dicamba. So if there's something that happens that's called an inversion, it's let's say it's really cool in the morning and then it heats up really rapidly through the day. What can actually happen is after you have sprayed the dicamba, it can come off of the plant, and if there's a wind it can move and it can go to somebody else's field. Now we have dicamba tolerant soybeans, but there's other soybeans like enlist soybeans, which we've planted in the past. But so if you spray dicamba and let's say your herbicide translocates and it goes to another field somewhere nearby it's an enlist soybean or a non-GMO soybean, it'll damage that soybean. It'll make it cup really bad, and it almost looks like it hasn't had any rain or something. I mean, it's happened to one of my fields before where the neighbor sprayed dicamba and it moved on them, and it cupped the living shit out of my beans and it made them look horrible. But there's actions you can do to, try to make them pay for it. But at the end of the day, it's not really worth it. It's just going to cause hard feelings with your neighbor, so you kind of just overlook it. But so the biggest thing when I'm spraying is to try to be on target. You don't want to stress yourself out too bad about it. A lot of farmers have killed themselves because there's too much pressure and they weren't making enough, and they ended up losing a farm, or they were going to lose a farm. And sad deal, but you gotta value certain things better. Life, your family, that kind of shit. Corn's first in our book. It'll always be first in our book. We're doing a little weak because we had that a little issue with white mold last year. We're trying to get beans out of the rotation for a little while. Last year, he probably should have had a field that yielded 90 bushels the acre, but I had like 25 instead, or something horrible, because white mold just took it out completely. I don't know if you know anything about white mold, but so white mold it basically lives in your soil. So there's these little mushrooms that during the year they shoot out these spores, which is what the white mold is, and it's how it reproduces. And it shoots it on the plant, and it essentially shoots mold onto soybeans, especially in high moisture conditions. And it'll rot the soybean and essentially kill the plant. But to truly get rid of white mold, you should rotate your crop out of beans or another hosting crop, which is, I would say, most broadleaf crops, for probably 7 years to actually eradicate it. But that's probably just not going to happen. I mean, most of the time you don't want to plant corn 7 times in a row, or wheat, or, I mean, you could go to corn to wheat, but wheat's kind of worth something right now, and it was last year too, but it normally isn't worth anything. So we normally don't plant wheat on our good stuff.
If anybody's got any questions for the show, feel free to leave us a comment, and we'll try to get to everybody we can.